Life is like a box of chocolates, isn't it? Sometimes you just never know. Anyway, folks, this is the Hagmann and Hagmann report for today. What is today? It's Tuesday's Withstand. It's Tuesday, September 16th, 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host of my son, Joe Hagmann, who is in studio. Good to see him today. I haven't seen him in about, it's been a while, 3 days now. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann report. Folks, you're about to hear an incredible 3 hours of programming, unbiased, uncensored news, information, analysis. You're listening to the only show where we bring you the news, information, and analysis in the multidimensional format. We'll be on the headlines and bylines. And the misdirection especially, because, folks, what you are seeing today is perhaps the most misdirected, intentionally misdirected issues ever in the history of our country, I believe. Folks, we broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us on the Internet at our home base, which is HagmannandHagmann.com. That's HagmannandHagmann.com. I'll say it one more time, HagmannandHagmann.com. 2 N's on Hagmann, spell out the word and then just throw another Hagmann in there. That's for Doug and Joe, dad and son, I guess. HagmannandHagmann.com. We're the premier, I like to think at least we're the premier father-son radio talk show host, or radio talk show on the Internet. Investigators together, 35 years of experience. We're also simulcast by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at the HagmannandHagmannReport.com. I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for purposely tuning in to our show. We realize that you've got 3 hours. You could be doing a lot of things with those 3 hours, one of which would include not listening to our show. We prefer you do. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. Joe, welcome to the studio. And by the way, can you hear those little twerps in your headphone from me?
No, that's from your Skype.
Yeah, I get that.
But I can't hear them, no.
Okay, as long as you can't hear it and the audience can't hear it, that doesn't bother me. I have to...
I told you to shut that off.
Well, I know. I had a hammer in my hand, but you wouldn't let me do anything with it.
Yeah, that's not the most effective way to get a Skype conversation, to leave that conversation, but it would be a trick overall. You just wouldn't have a computer to work on when you're done.
Yeah, that's what stopped me, because we need our equipment is subject to demonic interference. They are, of course. We do need our computers. But Joe,
now, let me ask you: no more distortion?
Yeah. No, suddenly. And what I'm thinking was the 7-second delay. We had what we couldn't hear is that we were talking over a non-existent audio file that was playing in the background. That's what I believe, or an audio file. And what happens is that it just got distorted that way. I could be wrong, but who knows? But you've done a lot of work. You've collected a lot of information. We got some sound clips. Of course, hour number 2, Stan Dale, the real Indiana Jones, Tuesdays with Stan. And I kid about that, with all due respect to Mr. Dale, because he is, of course, one of the premier physicists in the country. And we're lucky to have him every Tuesday. We really are very fortunate. So, but let's start off strong, Joe. We've got a lot of stuff to say. We have a lot of things to get into. And again, we're being before. Let me just set the stage by saying this. If you look at Fox News, I am so tired, ladies and gentlemen, it's our job to watch the Fox, CNN, MSNBC, CNNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, yes, all virtually simultaneously. And
it's probably the most, it's probably the worst part of this job. If there had to be a bad part, that's probably it.
Exactly. But, how many times can Lindsey Graham get on the airwaves? And I'll say it this way. look, I don't care if I don't care who's speaking, Democrat, Republican. I don't care about political party because they are meaningless. We all know that out there, folks. If you're listening to this in the UK, forget about parties. If you're listening to this in the US, forget about parties. It doesn't matter anymore. It's all about the royal bloodline controlling the vulgar. We are the vulgar people, the uninitiated, the unwashed masses. This is what it's all about. But Lindsey Graham has been, and all of the political commentators and all of the elected leaders and the appointed leaders are in virtual lockstep about handling the threat from ISIS. By the way, ISIS and ISIL, what do you call it? Let's call it for what it is. ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Very quickly, I'm going to hand it over to Joe. Folks, if you tend to call it ISIL, or if that's what you hear people calling it, let that be an alarm bell in your head. To call it ISIL recognizes the area of the Levant, which eradicates the nation of Israel, essentially. Now, that's a very simplistic explanation, and some might say, well, that's not technically accurate. Well, it is, at least for the intent it's being used right now. When Obama gets up, or Barry Soetoro gets up and says ISIL, the Islamic State of Iraq and in the Levant, he is actually not providing recognition to the nation of Israel. It's like jabbing a knife in the back of Israel. It's cute little coding words used by the initiated. ISIS is more applicable because Syria, folks, is the target. When we were on, Joe, we were on Josh Tolley's program, and I think the same day we were on Pastor Paul Begley's program, didn't we say that Syria was still the target? Of course we did. And didn't we also, folks, right from the beginning, right after Benghazi, didn't we say Syria is the target? And everyone says, oh, look at Ukraine, look at Crimea, march, And I remember during the conference, the prophecy conference, being in Florida for that, and during that, watching the news pre-dawn hours and seeing what was going on in Crimea and the quick takeover of Crimea by Russia. Well, everyone is trying to divert our attentions away from, or had been trying to divert our attentions away from Syria. If you follow the political message boards, folks, it's all about, you'll see everything but the real issue. The real issue is the destabilization and removing the power of Assad. Now, I'm no fan of Assad, believe me. I'm no fan of Assad, but I'm also less of a fan of going in and rearranging the chess pieces on the chessboard to fit the will of a bunch of globalists, internationalists and globalists, to increase the power that they've got or they will have over the world. Your children, my children, collective grandchildren, and I don't care where you're listening to this in the world, Europe or United States, North America, South America, it doesn't matter. You're going to be affected by the events that are coming to pass. Didn't we say? And I don't want this to sound like an I told you so, because it's really not meant that way. But this is just to reaffirm, I believe, the accuracy of the information that we let off with months and months ago, that this is all about Syria, because now, what are they talking about? What's Lindsey Graham talking about? The same guy who declared the entirety of the homeland as a battleground. He's talking about going into Syria, isn't he? Folks, this is all part of the plan. And Joe, I'm going to give it back to you at this point. But so the other thing too, ISIS also commemorates. ISIS, that name is convenient to the extent, if you go back into mythology, the god, goddesses, Isis and Osiris, and how ISIS relates to the building of the Western world. Osiris, the dismembering, and of course the monuments erected to, pardon the pun there, that was unintended, erected to the various gods, such as the Washington Monument, the various obelisks all across the United States. And author Mark Flynn does an extremely great job in his book, The Labyrinth, The Forbidden Secrets of the Labyrinth, talking about the architecture, what it represents. Bottom line is this. ISIS is really a twofold word. It is the more accurate because it identifies Syria as a target, and also it refers to the Greek mythological god and goddesses of which these internationalists, globalists worship. Not our God, but their God. And belief is the driver of action. And folks, it doesn't matter in this case what we believe in terms of the situation. It matters what they believe, because they're the ones that have the artillery, and they're the ones that are calling the shots. But the globalists have allowed, have nurtured, have equipped, trained, and really created ISIS, and now and have allowed them to expand, present a threat into Syria, into Iraq. Iraq is just merely a perpetual war. Syria is widening the war and slapping Russia across the face in a proxy battle. And, oh, by the way, the very same AQIM and that existed back in the time of Gaddafi, or existed back in the time of Benghazi, smuggling between North and West Africa into South Central and Latin America, drugs and arms, and drugs going back and forth, with drugs coming out of Central America into Western and Northern Africa, and weapons and fighters into Central America. This two-way street, this two-layer, four-lane highway, so to speak, that cross the ocean. This is what we're dealing with now on the southern border. And again, on the Josh Tully show, I think both Joe and I had recognized the fact that, yes, we are concerned with events at the southern border. We are concerned with ISIS, whether or not they are recognized as such. They are, in fact, ISIS components thereof.
Well, let's start there.
Go ahead. Because
we have in news today from the southern border and pertaining to ISIS, and this is from the New York Times. U.S. pushes back against warning that ISIS plans to enter from Mexico. It goes on. I'll just read the first two paragraphs, because this is where the important information is. Militants for the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria have traveled to Mexico and are just miles from the United States. They plan to cross over the border and will imminently launch car bomb attacks. The threat is so real, federal law enforcement officers have been placed at the highest state of alert, and the American military base near the border has increased its security. As the Obama administration and the American public have focused their attention on ISIS in recent weeks, conservative groups and leading Republicans have issued stark warnings, like those that ISIS and other extremists from Syria are planning to enter the country illegally from Mexico. But Homeland Security and the FBI, as well as other lawmakers who represent areas near the border, say there is no truth to the warnings. There is no credible intelligence to suggest that there is an active plot by ISIS to attempt to cross the southern border. Homeland Security officials said in a written statement using an alternative acronym for the group. They said ISIL. So Homeland Security and the FBI are saying there's no threat at the border from ISIL, stemming from ISIL or ISIS.
What do you expect from Jay Johnson, the head of DHS?
Jay or Jan? Is it Jan Johnson or?
No, it's Jay. It's J-E-H, but I think he pronounces it J.
And
it doesn't. Yeah.
And we had a Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel and the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Dempsey testifying today at the Senate Armed Service Committee in Washington on U.S. policy toward Iraq and Syria and the threat posed by the Islamic State. Today they testified. Two top military officials testified by the growing threat of ISIS, acknowledged by the Pentagon, and their current plan for the situation in Iraq and Syria and how it could soon shift. Now, there was a headline on Drudge today, it said boots on the ground, and it said no boots on the ground. This is what they're talking about, as well as all the other talking points the president has put out that seem to have been, they've flip-flopped, and other White House and Pentagon officials have came out and spoke, double talk compared to what the State Department was saying about what they were going to do. But they apparently have put together a plan to go forward with airstrikes and to train and equip fighters to take on ISIS pertaining to troops on the ground. And President Obama repeatedly went on the record in recent weeks to state there will be no boots on the ground in Iraq or Syria, where ISIS continues to wage an escalating campaign of violence. But they did not rule it out today. In fact, they kind of spoke towards it, especially Chuck Hagel. And if we have a clip of him, what he said, if you want to, we want to get into that.
Yeah, I think this is important, folks. I mean, we pick out the nuggets after frying our brain on these talk shows, and we try to make this as palatable for you as possible. If you want to, now's a good time or whenever.
As the president said last week, if you threaten America, you will find no safe haven. The President of the United States has the constitutional and the statutory authority to use military force against ISIL in Syria as well as Iraq. And CENTCOM is refining and finalizing those plans, which General Austin will brief to the President tomorrow in Tampa. This plan includes targeted actions against ISIL safe havens in Syria, including its command and control, logistics capabilities, and infrastructure. General Dempsey and I have both reviewed and approved the CENTCOM plan. The second element of the strategy is to increase our support for forces fighting ISIL on the ground, the Iraqi and Kurdish forces and the moderate Syrian opposition. To support Iraqi and Kurdish forces, the President announced last week that he would deploy an additional 475 American troops to Iraq. Part of that number includes approximately 150 advisors and support personnel to supplement forces already in Iraq, conducting assessments of the Iraqi security forces. This assessment mission is now transitioning to an advise and assist mission, with more than 15 teams embedding with Iraqi security forces at the headquarters level to provide strategic and operational advice and assistance. The rest of the additional 475 troops include 125 personnel to support intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions out of Erbil, and 200 personnel to increase headquarters elements in both Baghdad and Erbil.
All right. That was most of it. Congress could vote on this proposal as early as tomorrow, but Hagel warned today that failure to do as much ahead of the schedule of Capitol Hill recess would constitute a failure to respond to a clear threat, is what he went on to say. And also...
Wait, before you're going to change topics, or are you going to stay on this one?
No, I was going to get into ISIS. I just wanted to, this last piece. You remember the soldier Bergdahl? I believe this was the day we were leaving Montana. This made the news. There was a prisoner swap. 5 detainees from Guantanamo Bay were swapped by the president without any approval from the Congress or Senate, or really any knowledge, if I remember correctly. He swapped 5 Guantanamo detainee al-Qaeda prisoners for this soldier Bergdahl. Well, we're getting reports now that 3 of the 5 detainees are now ISIS commanders, high-valued ISIS commanders, as it's stated here, that have joined fighting in Iraq and Syria and using their rank to usher in an Islamic caliphate. The Taliban 5, who were transferred from Guantanamo Bay into the custody of Qatar, they list the names here, but they have disappeared from view since they were released, but there are eyewitness reports in both Iraq and Syria that claim that 3 out of these 5 are not only fighters but commanders in the ISIS movement.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a few things to say on this. Let me just move to the proper document here, as I've got about 5 or 6 open. All right. And one of these documents is actually off of our network. Okay, I just pulled this one up here. Folks, based on our investigation, now Joe has been an investigator with me for. Joe, when did you actually come on board in a really
what's come on board? Working or
being exploited like a dog? No, I mean
1920, and then off a few years from that, and then the rest of the time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was when you were 24 when you really 24 years old. So, okay. At any rate, the reason you just narrowly escaped this. One of the issues, folks, that is often talked about is the fact that there are Muslims inside this country. Muslims have infiltrated, of course, our government. Muslims have there are Muslim cells, terror cells in this country, and people will laugh and say, well, if that's the case, and I remember this argument being made right after 9/11, if that's the case, why haven't they done anything already? This is post 9/11, and this is before my mental reform, or shall I say, my education, my understanding of what the bigger picture really is. Ladies and gentlemen, please understand, there is a threat from Islamic terrorism, okay? Absolute threat from Islamic terrorism. But that threat is being fueled and handled and managed by the criminal rogue element within our own government. Now, so just think of it this way. If you have a group of Islamic terrorists that do something, take over a military base or attempt to take over a military base or blow up some part of our infrastructure, and they're Islamic, yes, they will be Islamic. They're not going to be, Polish separatists, for example. They're going to be Islamic, chances are. They're not going to be Christian fundamentalists. They're going to be Islamic. The reason for this is, and as I've said this before, is that the nature of their belief system is most consistent with the ideology of the globalists, and they are actually pushing for, or being pushed along with others, including but not limited to atheists, but that's a different topic or a different conversation. But here's what I'm getting at. And I go back to 2005. On the 27th day of May of 2005, I, of course, published a report on Muslim training and Islamic training in America, jihad preparation in America. In fact, Steve Quayle and I had talked about, and I mentioned this on a different broadcast, we talked about the situation in St. Louis, which I think it made the papers in St. Louis about an attendant at a gas station saying there will be wars on the streets of America. Well, people have a tendency, there are websites out there, they've got a tendency to say, well, it's Muslims, period, that's it, and they stop thinking. They've got their man, they've got their suspect. But what they don't understand is the backstory and how this is being managed. It's like only getting half of. It's like getting a gang of bank robbers and only getting 3 of the 12. They're not wrong. Of course, they're not wrong. They're not incorrect. They're just not understanding the vastness of what's going on. I've got photo, and I had submitted to the Department of Justice, again, videotape and photographic evidence of paramilitary training in this country. Joe was with me, I believe, at one time in 2004, or 2005, I'm sorry. Wait, let me just double check here, because this is important to me, and I think this is so important for people to understand.
This is what you're referring to now is what we saw in
on September 25th, 2004, in the city of Buffalo.
Yeah.
Okay, you were with me there at that time. Okay. Now, there's a location in the city of Buffalo at 485 Best Street. Okay, it is a school. It is the
former armory, right?
Yes, thank you. Yes. It was actually it's got a long history, and I was just looking at the time here rather than going through this the history. What this is a fortress-style building located within the city of Buffalo. It's owned by the Islamic Society of North America, or the ISNA. Now, there's a complex of buildings located at 485 Best Street, Buffalo, New York, and it was at the center of controversy prior to our investigation. Just 2 months after the 2001 attacks against the United States, that building was purchased, according to the records that we researched at the Erie County Courthouse, Erie County, New York Courthouse, by the ISNA, or the Islamic Society of North America, through a local imam, Muhammad Ismail Memon, M-E-M-O-N. Now, it's interesting because going back to that time, a lot of local residents and city officials expressed concern over the use of the complex of buildings. Now, this was formerly a detention center. There are 8-foot, 10-foot walls, and on top of the walls, and we've got photographs of this. At that time, there was fencing and barbed wire on top of this. So imagine, folks, in your city, just imagine this in your city, a fortress-style building with walls, solid cement block walls all across or encasing this complex, with gates on we'll say on the four, with one gate on each side of the four sides, and on top of all of that, fencing with some residual barbed wire from when it was a detention facility. Now, think about this for a moment. In 2001, this was purchased by the Islamic Society of North America, just 2 months after the 9/11 attacks. It's interesting because Buffalo Common Council member Charlie Fisher was talking at one of the council meetings saying, look, I've got sources, inside sources. These people, at best, meaning this compound, are armed and dangerous. They're doing paramilitary training there. This is in 2001 now, okay? So we had conducted an investigation into this compound. The news media in Buffalo had contacted the imam of this school/mosque study center, if you will, and the imam there said, no, we're not doing anything wrong here. You come on in and we'll give you a tour of the facility. Well, when Joe and I asked if we could have a tour of the facility without restriction, in other words, we would be allowed to go wherever we wanted to go, what do you think happened? No. Not just no, but hell no. You're not coming in our facility. In fact, you're not even coming near our facility. Remember that, Joe?
I remember a little bit more than that, too, but yeah.
Okay. Well, again, from the outside, and we're going to be publishing pictures. Now is the time, and I've been hesitant to do this until now for a couple of reasons. From the outside, it looks like some type of an older prison or fortress where the block walls surrounding it just looks like an older detention facility. The framework for the razor wire is still on top and such. 6 acres, folks, 6 acres covering this facility. And what's interesting, and you're going to find this out, folks, this building started out as a Catholic convent back in 1855, and it ran as such until 1968, when it was sold to the Division of Youth and sold to Albany, the state of New York, and was used as a detention center. But here is where everything becomes relevant. Oh, what do convents have? Or at least the old convents. What are the properties, especially the unrenovated ones? What were they famous for? Anyway, I'm going to look at the chat room. Anyone in chat? What do old convents have? What's something that old convents have that you don't hear much about? Yeah, none. It's okay. I get it. No, I'm talking about something very, very specific that you would never think of. You're okay. Who is that? Jan is getting close. She writes basements, dungeons. You're getting close. Graveyards. Well, okay. Graves for babies. Well, skeletons. Yeah. Body parts. Okay. There we go. Who is that? I can't see. John or Joe Hodges in the chat. You got it. Underground tunnels, if you can believe that. They do. So what is the significance of all of this? Why did I just spend 10 minutes flapping my gums here about this? Look, folks, the infrastructure for infiltration by ISIS has been present since long before today. It's been present since 2001. In fact, it's been present since the mid-1990s. Or, well, I'm sorry, the mid-1980s, but especially present since 1980/81, right after the Iranian Revolution. Back in 1980, a guy by the name of Barack+Obama came to America from Pakistan and established the Islamic Institute of America, the Quranic Institute. It's not the exact name, and of course there are a couple of books written, one by Paul Williams, The Day of Islam, but several other books that were written about this that used some of my surveillance photographs that were turned over to the Department of Justice, somehow got a hold of those photographs and used them in their books. Yeah, thanks for the shout out, but well, or lack thereof. But having said that, except for Paul Williams, and Dr. Paul Williams devoted a chapter on this, on our investigation into these compounds. But here's the deal. This facility is located about 7 miles, 6 miles, or less from the border. Not as the crow flies, but as one would drive. What's down in the southern part of the United States? Convents that have been purchased, real estate that has been purchased by the ISNA and various offshoots. What is taking place? What did we see, Joe, on the 25th of September 2004? What did we see take place, to the best of our reasoning, at the property at 45 Best Street in Buffalo, New York? We saw paramilitary training.
Yeah.
Right, of young Muslim
armed personnel.
We've got photographs, folks. We've got them. We also have photographs and videotape of training, paramilitary training, out in the Catskills. Folks, we're being gamed by this administration, by every previous administration, and by every elected official that's been in office and is in office. They know about these facilities. When we were doing surveillance after, we were lucky to get what we got because of, I'm not going to tell you how we were able to get it, but we got it videotaped, which we turned over to the Department of Justice. And we're only allowed to keep select portions thereof, and photographs, which we kept selected photographs, but we will publish these. But the bottom line is this. Today, if Joe and I drove into the area, and I'm talking about a 3-block radius around 485 Best Street, the facility at 485 Best Street would know we were there. They've got a perimeter surveillance built around this location. They've got perimeter surveillance built around all locations. They've got an antenna that I'm still trying to identify, and I will put it up on our website, and folks, it'll be marked as such. I want somebody to positively identify exactly what this antenna is for. Having said all of that, there is a very sophisticated network of Muslim terrorists that have the backing of the United States Department of Justice to launch attacks within this country. We have proof of it. We're not just flopping our gums. We have proof of it. And now we see why. The final dots are now connected because ISIS, the mentality, the psychology of ISIS completes the circle. ISIS completes the circle. ISIS will be the savage aspect, the savage component of the attacks. When? I don't know. But folks, this is a very, very serious situation. And oh, by the way, connected to, or at least at the periphery of that location in Best Street, is another mosque in Lackawanna, the Lackawanna 6. For those of you thinking, well, you're going over old material. No, we're finally connecting some of the much-needed dots with the creation, formation, and activation of ISIS in this country. And we're letting them through. This is a reason Obama and Congress has stalled, dragged their feet. The final chess pieces are being moved into place. And folks, let me tell you something. There will be war on the streets. But this is not merely a Muslim agenda. This is the movement of the globalists to use the Muslims as their military might against us for the grand purpose of unifying the religions and also to cover up the real reason that all this is taking place, and that's a great plundering of wealth out of the United States. Folks, I hope you heard and listened to what I had to say, because I'm not just talking out my you-know-what, okay? We've got the proof. And Joe, I'll just tell you this. Joe was a trooper, being a young man in a position to hold a camera when, in fact, it wasn't a very pleasant situation. It was in, think South Central Los Angeles, or think of that kind of environment. And this has nothing to do with race at all. This is everything to do with the level of potential danger. And I've got a good friend now living in Canada who was with us, who witnessed some of the same events. And who witnessed the perimeter surveillance in action. This phone tree, if you will. The surveillance of our surveillance. So, folks, I'm deadly serious, and I'm very serious. We're in a lot of trouble here inside the United States. We have a Muslim for the head of the CIA, a virtual Muslim, if not an outright Muslim, who's occupying the Oval Office. Certainly a Manchurian candidate that's been groomed to occupy that office. And we've got a bunch of warmongering individuals inside Congress who are dead. I mean, they want Assad out of Syria so bad they could taste it. They could taste the blood that's flowing in the streets of Syria right now. And they're enjoying it. And they're importing it here. Don't think for 1 minute this is not serious. This is extremely serious. I didn't mean to go off on such a tangent, Joe. Go ahead and take it.
No, that was good. It was important. Plus, it filled in some gaps of what we have seen over the last few years, what they are getting, preparing for. And, we talk about how these, what you call them, we can call them cells, what you call them, terrorist cells.
Sure.
These type of cells can remain dormant for 5, 10, 15 years. And they'll wait until everything's in place as part of their agenda or plan. And we have been fortunate, I think, as far as terrorism, real terrorism is concerned here. Now, we all know there's a difference between what has been called terrorism and what real terrorism is. But we have been fortunate not to see a real terrorist attack. And if it is possible for a real terrorist attack to happen by a network or different cells of people who are involved in activities like we saw in Buffalo and like there are in other places around the U.S., if these people aren't under the proper surveillance and watched and guarded properly, then there is a potential for lots of dangerous stuff to happen here in the United States. Now, I don't know if you saw this. Lindsey Graham yesterday stated ISIS could wipe out humankind.
Well, with his help, right. the most contemptible human being that I know right now.
Between him and McCain, what they've tried to do with Syria and Iraq, how they've openly been proponents of the continuation of the Bush years and what they want, they have not hidden their true agenda. John McCain went over to Syria and met with many of the Al-Qaeda or rebels there, and has been a proponent of funding the weapons to these fighters. And Lindsey Graham is going right along and hyping up the fear-mongering sensationalism with his slamming the president strategy for combating the ISIS militants, and said the president needs to step up the military action. He's calling for boots on the ground, a full-scale intervention of Syria, and he mentioned Syria. He didn't get into Iraq.
It's all about Syria,
right?
Yeah, isn't folks? Please, isn't that what we a
this
year
on Fox
ago?
News Sunday he was on. This is what they're quoting him from.
Oh, and I watched that with my father-in-law.
No mention of Iraq, but about 10 references to ISIS, a few to Syria, nothing to Iraq.
Yeah, I've got to tell you, I've never seen Lindsey Graham get so agitated before, and so animated when he talked about the need to go into Syria. Folks, these people are on a demonic mission. Now, once again, please do not take me as being an apologist for Assad. I'm not. But you're talking about the entirety of the Alawite and Christian population in Syria being wiped out with the help of the United States.
Now, whether this is important or not, or you want to read anything to this or not, last week I saw a clip of the Stephen Colbert show, and as a guest he had on Henry Kissinger. And he got into a conversation with Henry Kissinger about this was right before the president was speaking about ISIL last week. And ISIS, whatever. And he was asked, by Stephen Colbert, is this the potential to turn into a World War III type scenario? And he didn't say no until he was, really pushed by a Colbert person. But he talked about his new book is World Order. And he talks about he didn't answer the question straight out, yes or no.
By the way, how avert? I didn't. Sorry, how avert can you be? New book, World Order.
Yeah, and he talked about how his book is for the American people, not for leadership of other countries or leadership in this country, to better understand what they're trying to do. But he said he kind of skirted around the question about a world war. And Colbert kind of got on him about it. He said, you're kind of a grandfather figure. A comforting answer would be no, with the amount of influence and understanding you have into what's going on. But he came out to give an explanation of how to, the process to eradicate terrorism and other people who disrupt order was their goal. It wasn't just, he wasn't specific to a group or a nation or country or region. He just stated that any type of activity that disrupts the order of things is what their target is to be wiped out. Now that could carry a lot of other areas of focus that we see that are not areas where anything violent comes from. We see what we read information today on the new Real ID Act and the driver's license changes they're trying to implement. And, we have new information from Google, how the increase of 250% for U.S. government demanding data from their users, demanding Google for user data, an increase of 250% since 2009. And many other articles like this pertaining to a police state, a total control grid network. But this is what they plan on doing, through the biometrics, through the RFID chips and passports and licenses and this is what they're doing with the Real ID, National ID card, is putting RFID chips and licenses, and you will not be able to, it talks about timelines and on this Homeland Security document, after 2016, all driver's license will have a RFID chip inside of them, and states that do not comply with that, the citizens of the states are going to have to use other methods to travel, get on planes, even from flights from the U.S. to other cities in the U.S., and they're not, regular license will not do after 2016. But this whole ISIS threat, as we talked about many times, you go back a year from now, and they were threatening to engage Syria in some type of military combat. This is when, the red line was crossed, the red line Obama put out, and then the country and a lot of the media was against it. What they've done is repackage the threat through ISIS. If you saw this weekend, there was another beheading of a Britain citizen on released this weekend. And what they're doing, and I heard this on the satellite radio, was as soon as they talked about the horrific nature of the beheadings, the host of the show asked a military general, now does this, you think, will this get Britain involved in putting their military with us? And it's almost like they can't help themselves. If this isn't going to do it, we should plan 10 more beheadings, and we're going to have to step it up a notch. They're going to continue to step up the atrocities until the American people are asking for intervention. And those atrocities could be true or media propagated.
See, folks, and Joe, that was extremely on point, very, very good, very extremely good with what you just said. The the real core issue here is, if you go back a couple of years, we have to help the anti-Assad rebels, and we've got to arm the anti-Assad rebels and train them. Of course, that's what Benghazi was about. Then, of course, we saw
which rebels should be armed.
Right. Well, now we see that millions of refugees, mostly Christians and Alawites, are leaving Syria, not because of what Assad is doing, but because of what the anti-Assad rebels are doing. We created that problem. And as our intelligence insider has said many times, the situation in Syria is not going to implode much like Iraq did, or Afghanistan, or Libya.
They may make it appear that. I mean, anything could be shown across our TV screens and be made to look like something else, or they're going to continue, like I said, they're going to continue to pull off, whether it's ISIS coordinating with intelligence agencies or whatever. You're going to see, until the American people are on board or aren't going to, really give anybody a hard time over an intervention, a full-scale intervention, you're going to continue to see these acts of terrorism, what you'd expect from a real terrorist organization. They're going to increase. The scale will increase, the amount of deaths will increase, the amount of brutality, the amount of violence. They're going to do so in a way that it'll be unlike something we've ever seen, anything we've ever seen before. There will be more beheadings, maybe more executions, more bombings. There's going to be an increase in what will seem to be ISIS, just systematically murdering people. And as somebody pointed out in the chat room, ISIS has stated they want the U.S. to attack them. So what kind of...
Exactly.
I mean, it's never ending. It's just like 9/11 all over again in just a different way.
Exactly. And when 4 different occasions the American people said no to an invasion or an attack in Syria, no to the NATO air cap, no to, of course they attempted to blame Assad for the chemical weapons dispersal. And folks, by the way, there was more than one type of chemical weapon, yet you're not going to hear that from the media. And you're not going to hear that from certain commissions and committees. By the way, the House Select Committee on Benghazi starts tomorrow. And guess what they're going to start out with, folks? They're going to start out with the security. Didn't we say that any time that the security is talked about or referenced in the context of Benghazi, not Tripoli, not Cairo, but Benghazi, that it is a fictitious, it's a false, and it's not right. It's a red herring. So, folks, the Gaudi Select Committee, which starts tomorrow, is going to start out with talking about security and the security failures. And one thing we didn't get into earlier is the shredding that went on. If you want to get into that now, Joe, I think it might be appropriate to talk about.
All right, I'll play at least the first minute of this clip we have from Atkins, who is making some claims about a late-night shredding session at the State Department pertaining to documents that have to do with Benghazi. Now, we'll get the meat and potatoes of this, and then we'll cut it short.
New allegations in the Benghazi investigation. A former State Department diplomat accusing staff members of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton of secretly removing politically damaging documents before turning over files to the Accountability Review Board. Investigative journalist Cheryl Atkins broke the story. She joins us. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, what happened?
Ray Maxwell, who is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary, very well respected, told me that he witnessed an after-hours session in the basement of the State Department in an operations center, which he was told by an office director that they were under orders to separate documents before they went to the Accountability Review Board, to separate out anything that could be embarrassing, as he put it, to the 7th floor or the front office. 7th floor referring to Secretary of State Clinton and her advisors.
So did he actually see this? Did he go down there and look at this basement as they sort of culled through the records?
Yes, he heard about the operation. He was not invited specifically to it, but one of his employees was there. So he stopped in on a Sunday. He was told, he says, what the purpose was. He went in, he sat down, he went through some papers. He said he didn't feel right about it. He asked, he says, is this ethical? And the office director answered, these are our orders. And then he claims that while he was there, Secretary of State's Chief of Staff Cheryl Mills and her Deputy Chief of Staff Jake Sullivan came in for a few minutes, acknowledged him, spoke to him briefly. He says they appeared to be checking in on the operation, and they left.
Why did Maxwell come forward on this?
Well, he retired. That's why, long and short of it, he retired, and then he spoke. But here's, folks, when you hear that, here's the other side of the story, or here's the rest of the story. The ARB, the Accountability Review Board, was led by Thomas R. Pickering. Pickering was an ambassador. He's retired from the State Department as Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs. Okay. He was he reached the rank of career ambassador, the highest in the U.S. Foreign Service. He served as U.S. ambassador to Russia, to the Russian Federation, that is, India, Israel, El Salvador, Nigeria, and Jordan. He was also the U.S. ambassador and representative to the United Nations in New York, where he led the U.S. effort to build a coalition. Folks, listen to this. In the UN Security Council during and after the First Gulf War. This guy is, oh, by the way, he's tied at the hip with Henry Kissinger. He's also very, very tight with Hillary Clinton. So do you think that Pickering and his Accountability Review Board is going to furnish any type of unbiased investigation? Of course not. So what were they shredding? Remember, the shredding was prior to the ARB investigation. That's what we know, according to Raymond Maxwell. If that's the case, and the shredding was taking place in the basement of Foggy Bottom, well, what were they shredding? Reportedly things that could potentially embarrass Hillary Clinton. Do you think for one moment, ladies and gentlemen, the shredding the documents there is the real story? The real story is the shredding that took place elsewhere, not before the ARB investigation, but in the minutes, if not hours, after the actions in Benghazi, the attack in Benghazi. I guess what I'm saying to you is, while this story does seem to show some complicity, its purpose is to make Hillary Clinton look bad, rightfully so, but it's also being used as a smokescreen for the shredding that took place not on the 7th floor, not on the basement of the State Department, not in the basement of the State Department, but on the 7th floor, as well as at Langley.
With that, it's a good place to go to our top of the hour break. We're going to come back with Stan Deyo. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Tuesday, September 16th, 2014. We are back with Stan Deyo. Stan, it's great to have you back on the show. Hope you got a lot done in your last couple weeks.
Thank you. I did. There was quite a bit of stuff. Well, I'm still working on it, but I got the urgent parts of it away, and part of it was a rush trip over to Las Vegas to attend a premiere of the third movie in the series of the John Galt movies, or Atlas Shrugged movies, from Ayn Rand's book. We were invited there by the producers, and we're quite pleased that we were able to go to the premiere.
Fantastic. Great to hear you, Stan.
Hey, Doug, how you going?
It's 6 of 8 cylinders. Is that good or no?
Hey, listen, I got some good news that might help you eventually, with back problems and things. One of your listeners, Elizabeth, gave me a call and told me about a thing she'd heard about with laser treatments, with what they call cold laser treatments that you get at usually at chiropractors. And I found one, about an hour's drive north of us, and went there yesterday. And to my surprise, all they did was wave this dual frequency cold laser over the area of my rib cage and back that was, giving me a lot of trouble. And eventually I felt a little warmness in that area, and they don't touch you or anything with the laser. It just, goes down there, but penetrates the skin about 2 or 3 inches. Well, anyway, I felt a little bit better, and then I got up this morning, I felt a lot better. So I'm going back to get a few more done, and maybe it'll work for you if you can find somebody around here that does that cold laser treatment, because
I've heard about that, and I was, in fact, without giving out too much information, will do. And if it works for you, yes, my goodness, that's great. And in fact, my wife will be glad. Well, she was trying to stuff me in the microwave. I'm not sure if that's what she was trying to do. Anyway. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better there, my friend.
Well, yeah, and I did enjoy that John Galt thing. It's, I suppose you read the book years ago like I did, all 1,100 and something pages of it, but...
yeah, that was. I remember reading the book, and when you can remember reading a book, I guess it's
well, in what was it, the Library of Congress or something? They say it's as popular, second only to the Bible or something. They have the shrug thing, but it whether it is or not, the thing is that in 1956 when Ayn Rand wrote the book, she predicted in fictional form a lot of the things that are happening in the United States, where the greedy left-wing looters are stealing everything from those of us that make and produce stuff, killing companies and corporations because of it, forcing them out of the country wherever. And, and there is certainly an underground push for developing free energy so that people can do what John Galt did and pull groups out of community into these secret places that have their own power and resources and just secede from the United States. Anyway, it was, you remember all the things where the companies one by one started to fail as their leadership converted their assets to gold and disappeared and to this mysterious hidden valley in Colorado, of course. Holly wrote an article and put it up on the website about the various movies that had used Colorado as the gathering place, after the apocalypse or during it, like The Stand, and there were several others she had there, but Colorado, it was favored for Ayn Rand and putting her free energy thing here, an atmospheric thing, and in the movie they go over to Utah to university to try to figure out how John Galt's motor worked, or his free energy motor. This is people trying to figure out what was happening to all the leading industrialists that were disappearing. And in truth, the free energy machine or system that we've been working on, behind the scenes is an atmospheric electricity converter, just like in the book. And the guy that invented it lived in Utah. His name was Dr. T. Henry Murray. And he did file for a patent in, 1930s, maybe 1940s, 1930s, I think it was. It took a working model to the patent office and said, look, here it is, guys. Can I have a patent? And they asked him, well, okay, it seems to be working. And he had sworn testimonies from judges, sheriffs, all kinds of people, engineers, who'd seen it work for 7 days in a row without, going out. And it was producing 5 to 10 kilowatts of power continuously. So since he couldn't tell where the energy came from, but he knew how to tap it, the patent office said, no, we're not giving you a patent. Well, this was a few years before Ayn Rand wrote Atlas Shrugged. And in there, of course, the hero goes to a secret valley in Colorado with his atmospheric electricity converter, which used an antenna. A little bit slightly different than the way they depict the device in the movie, but in the book she talked about it that way, and I suspect it was because she heard about it, heard about Moret's device through her connection with Lord Rothschild, whom she was a friend of. But anyway, I then filed, probably 7 years ago, for a patent on the basic circuit for the same thing that Moret developed, and the patent office denied it, saying it can't possibly work. And I didn't even ask me for a demonstration, say it can't work. So normally when you have a patent application that you put in and they deny it, it's called an application, an unfilled application, an ungranted one. And they're supposed to take the application and put it in a box and lock it up in the records room, not to make it public in case you wanted to file an amended report on it or try for another patent based on a similar type circuit or device. Well, no, they didn't do that. The patent department put it up on the internet, and they published to everyone the patent that they didn't grant to me, the application, which is okay because there's a lot of other things you have to do to make it produce power for your house. But so the Atlas Shrugged scenario I have a real fondness for it, because certainly there are a number of us who are playing like John Galt and developing that electrostatic atmospheric converter to supply power day and night without batteries. Anyway, that was my rant on the trip over to Vegas to see the premiere of the movie, and it's worth seeing. I just released it this week, so go to the theaters and see it.
Very good. Wow. Great backstory on that. Okay.
You might actually see, Holly and I were some of the, we helped to raise funds for the promotion of the movies, because we felt it was important, and we knew that they were being blocked in a number of directions so they couldn't play it in theaters all over the country. Hollywood, being left-wing as it is, didn't like what he was doing, the guy that funded it, John Aguilaro. And so you'll see our names there in the credit line on the DVD, the Blu-ray edition. I don't know whether they show it in the theaters, but they had us up there as contributing to that and the credit roll. So now we're famous.
Congratulations. That's fantastic. Wow.
There were a lot of other people. There were about, about 40 or 50 of us that were significant assistants there, and then about another 3,900 that did groundwork and organized ticket sales and promotions in their neighborhoods. But this has been a grassroots effort to help, the production team to get that movie out to show people what's going to happen, and it's happening right around us, at least economically. Their solution, of course, Ayn Rand's solution isn't what a biblical solution would be, but you and I both know that there are a number of things we can do to prepare and endure, and if we're even here, which is an addendum to her book. Anyway, enough.
All right. Fantastic. Well, Joe and I, before the show, were talking, saying, my goodness, we're glad you're back, because there's so much to discuss, so many events taking place that we'd like to get your take on. Joe, I'll turn it back to you. I know that you, right before the show, we were talking about I think one of our favorite topics, but go ahead, Joe. I'll just let you take it.
Well, there's a few things going on. We see more sinkholes opening up. There was a big sinkhole that opened up in the 7th Ward in New Orleans, swallowing a city street. I see on your show images page you have you have the earthquakes for the last 48 hours, and you have that's for the globe, and you have last 48 hours over in is this the Canary Islands area?
That would be the Azores. It's just west of the Rock of Gibraltar there, and the Straits of Gibraltar, on a tectonic ridge, or a mid-Atlantic ridge. It goes right up into the middle of, guess what, Iceland. And that situation up in Iceland we can talk about in a minute too, because it is certainly developing.
Yeah, and basically I just wanted to turn it over to Stan and see what it was on his radar.
Well, Kim, that one of your listeners that does a lot of research for me on what's happening with earthquakes and volcanoes and the like, has been emailing me in the last couple of days like crazy over developments in Iceland with that long tear of 2, possibly 3 volcanoes linked together there in the southeastern part of Iceland. Now, you can see that if you click on that first image on the show image page, which you can see if you just go online to earthquakes, global earthquakes or USGS or whatever, you can see big circles of quakes, Richter 4 and above, Richter 5 and above on Iceland. Now, on the my show images page, somewhere down here, I'm just looking to see, I did have a link. I don't see it at the moment. It's over in the live link under Iceland show images live cam. One of the cameras went, there was a big earthquake, and then it went black for a while today, and at present it's still black. We see nothing, so we don't know whether an eruption is in progress there that we're not hearing about or what. But the scientists in Iceland are somewhat concerned that this may escalate into a really serious situation, throwing a lot of ash and debris up in the air, lasting for some time. Anyway, you can see if you go to that sub page, which is underneath volcanic eruption in Iceland, which shows a smoking thing coming out of Bardarbung volcano. And in the middle of, when you go to that page, in the middle you'll see the live cam picture I took a couple weeks ago, which is now, of course, dark. If you click on that, you'll see a black screen come up. And I think something must be wrong over there with that camera. And possibly the volcano is doing its bit now. I don't know.
Coincidence, Stan? I mean,
no.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Now, looking at earthquakes at the moment, we're seeing the usual cluster of them in Oklahoma and the Baja. Now, I think a couple weeks ago when I was doing the show, I think I did mention something about the weakness of the Baja and the great tear that had occurred in Hermosillo there in Mexico on the Baja. I was concerned we should be looking for significant earthquakes in the Salton Sea area, which, of course, is very close to where these 2 big circles are on the map that I'm looking at today in the last 48 hours. Then we see a lot of them over in Puerto Rico. We see a couple of big ones between the eastern tip of South America and the northwestern tip of Africa. And these are on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is active from, almost at the South Pole all the way up. There are earthquakes in the last 48 hours that have appeared there of significant size. Plus, we're seeing it in the Mediterranean around Greece and that area there. You can see a bunch of them really rocking and rolling, smaller, but there's something happening there. And I'm not sure what that's going to lead to. But all of these, as usual, are along either plate tectonic borders or along mid-Atlantic or mid-oceanic ridges. So I think in the next few days, a week or so, we're going to be expecting some serious activity in some of those places I've mentioned, and even in Honduras or, Panama, Central America, that area there, and down on the west coast of South America, in Chile and Peru. So keep your eyes open for that. And there are sinkholes happening all over the place, but they're not big. And nearly every one I found in the news this week are caused by water pipe breakages and leaking. Again, which tells me, wait a minute, what causes all of them to start doing this now in concert? And I still get back to the fact that I think we're seeing a stretching of the Earth's surface, which may be a temporary thing. It may return to normal, but I do think it's related to the tumbling pair of north-south magnetic poles inside the planet. The core of the planet is, according to the geophysicists at the moment, lopsided. It's kind of egg-shaped lopsided, and it's moving a bump around, which is pushing on the surface of the Earth as this bump traverses. Although it's way down in the core, the effects will probably be not as dramatic up on the surface, but it is adding to, in my opinion anyway, the distress in the mantle, which is causing cracking, tears, sinkholes, and that kind of stuff. And the Azores, you asked about what that was over there in the third picture. The Azores we've been watching for some time because that area there, if it becomes significantly active, the shock waves from that could very well set off the Cumbre de Vieja down in the Canary east of there. It'd have to be a big one, but again, it's something we're watching for that whole area, and it seems to be a wee bit unstable. Now, if you look, those of you that can, if you look on the second row of images for tonight's show in the main page, there show images, you'll see a picture of reduced gravities. There's an anomaly in the Indian Ocean, in the northern part of it there on the tip of India near Ceylon. This is important. It's a variation in the gravitational field of the Earth in that dark blue area. It's lower than, say, the area up around Iceland, right along where, of course, those earthquakes and volcanoes are starting to occur. And also, it's lower than the areas along the southwest Ring of Fire from New Guinea up into, the southern part of Japan. You can see it there on that map. What I'm thinking we're seeing here is distress on the mantle and a distribution of mass, which is changing the gravitational potential across the planet in the way this map shows. And when I did the Garden of Eden talk, I did talk about a meteor hitting over to form the Yucatan, or form the Gulf of Mexico there when it impacted at the Yucatan Peninsula. It was a glancing blow, in essence, in that it didn't go straight to core. It bounced off the core, and the resulting bulge that it caused in the Earth was right where this dark blue, low gravity, low mass area on the planet is that NASA has measured. This, if you look at that, it shows that mass has been shoved over toward the southwestern side of the Ring of Fire. It's reddish. And also there's been a shoving of mass up into Iceland and Europe, as the masses that were originally there connected to the east coast of Africa, like India and Jakarta, basically the area just to the left of the red zones on the image there, were pushed up and formed the Himalayas and part of the mountains of Iran. And the other mass was then shoved over toward Iceland. So anyway, that map is something rather interesting, kind of underscoring what I talked about in the Garden of Eden thing about the distribution of mass after the impact. Now, a little bit of a treat at the moment, if you can get a hold of those little paper 3D glasses, where you got the red patch over the left eye and a green patch or blue patch over your right eye, you can click on that middle image that I have there called 3D image of East Africa. And what you'll get is a very big file, but it shows East Africa and a green line outlining the land of Eden. And in the land of Eden on the east side is where the Garden of Eden was. And you'll see those yellow lines are the rivers coming out of the Eden complex and around Havilah, in the lower part of the Garden of Eden. You can see it. Now, the reason this is a treat is if you put your 3D glasses on, you can see the relative heights in 3D of the Garden of Eden and Mount Kilimanjaro, things like that. And also, you can see the riverbeds, or the riverbed, where the three major rivers came out in a yellow line, going all the way down to the Afar Triangle, into Ethiopia, down into the Djibouti area, and also up the Red Sea. This is the first time I've been able to see an image like this from their imaging radar. I don't know when they did this, but I just ran across it today. And it's so good, when you look at it this way, because it does show the clear path, even though there's been a little bit of volcanic activity and sediments placed, it does show a clear path from the Garden of Eden there at Nguru Crater right on down into the Afar Triangle of Ethiopia, where part of it split off to go up the Red Sea, and the other two went off, toward the Indus River Valley and toward the western side of Iran. you can see it. It's just as clear as day. So anyway, if you get a chance and have patience and download that, you can look at it later in 3D. You'll see where the actual land of Eden, where I guess God dwelt at the time, it's very well defined by lakes and ridges and valleys and rifts that formed around the start point of the Great East African Rift. And it's a dome, a push-up dome, and some of the high parts are between 10 and 20,000 feet altitude. That's why the water went so far, because that was a high spot. And modern geologists don't even really completely agree on what caused this dome and this rifting to occur. It might well have been due to the impact of a meteor, but I think it was prior to that. So, my leaning is that it was formed when Pangea was formed, and what made it happen then, I don't know. But anyway, you can see that, and that's, as I say, a little bit of a treat in 3D to be able to witness that.
Interesting.
Yeah. That super genius Elon Musk that is in charge and owns SpaceX. Well, anyway, he and Boeing have been given a contract to build taxi craft, taxi rockets to get up into orbit, into low orbit, and they've been awarded the contract by NASA. There's a concerted effort to raise funding, which is not done by NASA, but by astronauts and other people joining with him, to set up a bunch, like thousands, if not tens of thousands, of little micro-satellites which can monitor positions of asteroids and send the data back to us on low-power signals. And that needs to have some kind of a taxi to get it up into orbit, and then from there be launched out to be distributed in the solar system near the major large threatening meteors that we want to keep track of. Because even though NASA's planning to have a method using infrared detection to put a satellite nearer the sun than we are to see the infrared pictures of the asteroids and map them their position, then once the mission is over, these things could be perturbed by themselves and other asteroids, by moons, by planets, and so we won't know where they go unless we have these little trackers going. So I thought it was very interesting that a civilian, Elon Musk, could get a joint contract with Boeing to build the shuttles, or the space taxis as they call them, to get up there, making it easier to make trips up and put things in orbit and launch from there to other places. And, while we're on that subject of technology, they say that DARPA is testing small little jets, but they're testing Star Wars type laser cannons, and they show a picture of it, I think, on the CNET.com news site. You can probably get it there. Since you and I were talking about cold lasers and fixing our back, I tell you what, when this one popped up, I thought, laser prototype. No, I don't think I'll use that one to fix my back. Wow. Anyway.
Interesting confluence there. Wow, yeah. So that's the propulsion?
That's right. That's a weapon. It's a weapon. It's like a weapon.
Okay.
Yeah, they're testing it on a small commercial type jet, a twin-engine type executive jet, and they've got a little port on the side, and I guess it's directed from there. But when you think about it, a little private, corporate jet is small. It's bigger than a fighter, but it's small, and so whatever they're doing the test with is not very big, but it must be pretty impressive.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I just, okay, now I'm rethinking things, but okay. No, actually, wow.
Sam, I wanted to ask you if I could, we had this pretty bigger solar flare that was earthbound last week, and I didn't get a chance to see, but they were reporting that auroras could be, seen halfway south into the country, through half the North America. Were you able to see those, or did you catch any pictures?
No, we had intermittent cloud cover where we are. I did go out and look a couple times, but they saw them down in Arizona apparently. Again, this is kind of unusual to have this many in a sun that is having so few sunspots this cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that portend anything? I mean, should we? My favorite question: should I be worried?
Well, this particular, at least one of these two flares had a CME that was directed at Earth, and they were saying that the northern hemisphere would probably get a strike, and there might be some, power difficulties and perhaps some transformer damage, but not likely because of the strength and the speed of it. But the fact that we're getting an Earth-directed thing released at us like that makes me want to look at the next 27 days as that spot comes back around, if it's going to develop into something much bigger than a 1.6 X flare, which X flare 1.6 is interesting, but we've had it as high as an X44 before, and so that's what we want to be sure we're not seeing.
Okay. Joe.
Yeah, and also, Stan, have you heard anything about this comet 67P? It's relatively, it's coming around this time of year, I guess.
Maybe.
2004. Okay.
I'm not afraid with it, really. I think I did read a brief article. What did you find out?
Well, there was an interesting article from the Huffington Post that there was a UFO sighted on the surface of this comet. This is from 5 hours ago. And I thought that was a rather strange headline. I've never, you see some of the stuff with closer asteroids, but it says a UFO has been sighted on the surface of comet 67P by the Rosetta spacecraft. The craft, which is currently tailing the comet and has just announced its landing point, was able to take a high-resolution image, which then revealed a metallic-looking object. And I just didn't know if you had a chance to see this or not. I can send it to you if you haven't.
As I recall, the Huffington Post is not 100%, straight shooting journalism. Isn't that kind of the way we think about that?
You're exactly right. But one thing I thought of was that when it comes to, they don't really get into the Earth changes, the space stuff. Would there be a reason for publishing a story that wouldn't be true along these lines?
I don't know, unless shall we call them again, the powers that be are wanting to draw our attention to the unofficial presence of aliens somewhere close to us. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I'm looking at it now, and I don't see anything on it here other than what they say is a small metallic object. Yeah. Are you there still? Yeah.
Yeah. I just found that to be weird.
Is that commercial playing? Can you hear that?
No.
No.
Good. It's playing through my speakers, but not yours. Okay. The usual crud you got to listen to on the video. I'm on that Huffington Post site. And I can't. There we go. I found it. There it is. I'm just waiting to see it come up here so I can have a closer look at that UFO thing you're talking about, guys. And here we go. Come on. Here we go. Give me a video. Nothing. Oh, here we go. All right. Yeah, that was from September the 10th. Okay. Takes a selfie with a comment. Yeah. Gee, that's an interesting looking chunk, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not a bad picture. Relatively clear.
Yeah, it's nice resolution on it. Yeah. I'm still waiting for the UFO to show up, but I don't see that.
I think if I'm looking correctly, I did not watch the video, but there was a picture down below, I think, that shows the, or at least it did. Here, let me reload this. That just showed. It looked like a little ball sitting right in the middle of on the plane of the asteroid, where there's no. You see a few rocks hanging out there, but yeah, I just reloaded it, and it's under the video. on the under the first few paragraphs. There's a picture.
All right, I'm just going down to look at it. I see what you're talking about. Well, that's a European Space Agency photo. I have seen small ball-like shapes like that on Mars, as part of the Martian landscape, but I don't know about this. It's a reflective object, it does look like. And it's brighter, the albedo is brighter than anything else on it, which does indicate something quite unusual. It's not covered in any of the dust. Got me. I don't know what they would call a UFO when it's... Say again?
Yeah, did another country beat us to landing their aircraft on the asteroid comet before we did?
Well,
that's
probably
what they said they're going to do.
But yeah, probably. Yeah, the Chinese are out there too. Oh, I see that it enlarged it on the YouTube thing. It's a strange shadow. Well, look, I don't know. It's a mystery. But It does appear that the European Space Agency image has not been doctored at this point. It looks pretty good. I've got it in Photoshop, having a blow-up of it, and the pixelation around it is in keeping with the pixelation of the shadows that are there around other objects up the hill from it. You can see that the little pixel structures and density of them is the same. The only thing that's different is that bright white spot right there in the center. Oh, well. We'll keep an eye on that and see if we can come up with anything. Maybe some of your listeners will know. I don't know.
Another thing I want to get into with you is the hurricanes or lack thereof this year. And I know there was just one that I think struck the southern Mexican peninsula, the Baja area. And I think there's one or two tropical storms down there. You got one in the Atlantic, but what's with this? The last few years we haven't seen thankfully, a hurricane really make landfall on the mainland U.S. Does this give way to colder winters, or does this tell anything about what's going on with the jet stream, our atmosphere, or are we just in a period where we're lucky?
There are a number of factors that create hurricanes. The major factor is the heat differential, intense heat near intense cold or cooling, and then a little bit of the Coriolis effect of the Earth spinning and the atmosphere dragging along behind the surface, the drag function, which curls, in the northern hemisphere, curls around, anti-clockwise. The Earth is still spinning at the same rate. Our tilt and position relative to the sun is about the same. The temperature gradients are changing. We are seeing ice building up in the North Pole now, whereas it was melting for several years, and we thought that was the beginning of what the liberals had called global warming, and what I was calling, heat coming out of the core of the planet. With the increased ice on the North Pole and the two North Poles and two South Poles that NASA has detected inside the planet, each pair in a hemisphere, North and South Hemisphere, it might be that this is disrupting the electric charge portion of the process that makes hurricanes and tornadoes. It might also be that the hole at the pole, if it was starting to open or thin in that area, is now closed as part of a periodic, oscillation or vibration, in the planet. The Earth, if you look at it as a giant from space, is a very fragile, thin thing on the surface. It's like a soap bubble. It's the mantle is that thin relative to the rest of the inside of the planet, whether it be shells of voids or solids or whatever. But there is enough of a gap underneath the mantle of the Earth to create this illusion. So if you were to be that giant and thump the Earth, you would see it, distort and vibrate like a soap bubble would if you blew on it in the air while it was, had already been formed. So I don't know. I think it's climatic change due to a number of factors. And at this point, all I can say is I still think we need to look out for some very strange, severe climate changes. And we're on the cusp of that now with an early winter upon us. we've seen evidence of it all over the country in various crops and
South
weather
Dakota,
patterns,
Wyoming,
floods.
both got what they call the summer snowstorm, early storm.
Yeah.
The temperatures have been rather cool in the Northeast, and we keep hearing that it's going to be a terrible winter this year, and it looks like it might, with the way things are going. Last year was a very cold winter compared to the few years before that, where we had relatively warm weather. Our lake didn't even freeze here; even the bay didn't freeze. I don't believe 2 years ago, but it's been very cold up here for this time of year. So this could be part of the...
Keep an eye on it. I do think we're going to see it get colder. I do. I agree with you. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Sam.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just looking. I think you covered this gravity around the Indian Ocean on your show images.
Yeah.
What is this showing us? It says gravity anomaly.
Well, that was where the mass of the Indian continent was shoved up into the Himalayas. That mass used to occupy that space, and now it's been shoved up, and a portion of it has been shoved over toward Indonesia. And so you'll see that Indonesia has higher gravitational mass, and the Himalayas and northwest of there toward Iceland have higher mass, which is a result of whatever pushed up underneath between Africa and India when Pangea broke up and shoved it up there. And so I was just saying that this is another confirmation what I was talking about the Pangea breakup after the flood, just briefly after the flood, within 200 years of that. And we know that because of the Babylonian clay tablets, or Sumerian clay tablets, that were probably used by Moses to write the first part of Genesis about the Garden of Eden and where it was. Anyway, that was all that was for. Speaking of that Garden of Eden stuff, did you guys cover the Ebola situation at all?
No, and that was on my list of things to ask you about because, I've got some personal questions about what really is taking place with Ebola. So if you want to cover it, perhaps you can answer my questions in advance.
Well, okay, it's virtually out of control over there in Liberia, and the White House is sending over 3,000 U.S. troops who are being trained now to help train other health caretakers in Liberia and neighboring countries to deal with people who've come down with it, to try to either cure them or give them a peaceful passing or whatever. What worries me is they've got 3,000 of our troops over there. UN's got 7,000 of their troops who are not trained at all, and they're wandering around doing the best they can to control the spread of it by holding the population stable, but it's not working. Long-term forecasts are now saying that there may be as many as 5 million Africans who die in this over the next few years. And even if a magic wand were waved and Ebola disappeared, was gone from the earth, at least as far as people being sick with it, for several years after that, you would run the risk of a re-emergence of it from the virus, hibernating in some host or spot on the planet, which someone then stumbled across or ate or whatever and started all over again. Now, strangely enough, the U.S. is very quietly at the moment sending troops over into Tanzania, Kenya region. And I know from talking to some of the contractors that are doing work there that they're building concrete bunkers and buildings for these troops to help defend Tanzania and Kenya and Burundi and those areas there from terrorist attacks and possibly to keep Ebola out of it if they can do so. This is interesting in that Tanzania is an emerging source of like trillions of not gallons, is it, but trillions of something or others of natural gas that is untapped, and they're going to go in there and tap it now. And so, like anything else, we step in when it's oil or gas, to help, which is rather interesting. But I'm just trying to find that article I found on it, but I can't quite dig that up at the moment. Trillion something gas. I don't know whether they measure it in barrels or what do they normally measure natural gas in?
Well, I think it's liquid, or is it pounds or? No?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever the standard unit of measure is, my mind has gone blank. It would be like, I think they were saying about 3 trillion of these are available, whether it be cubic meters or whatever, but which is a lot. And so here we are seeing our administration going over to help them. And why? Because it would help us have access to the natural gas there as a fuel source. Again, I don't think it'll benefit the people in that country much if we get in there, but that's what's happening. And again, we're going to have people that are potentially going to be exposed to Ebola. Now, I don't see how they can control it if our troops come back from over there, having been exposed. The incubation time of the Ebola strain that you're looking at is anywhere from 2 to 21 days, with an average of about 5 to 10 days where the symptoms manifest. So guys could be sent home with the disease and we wouldn't even know it.
Well, wouldn't the responsible thing to do would be, unfortunately, but quarantine those coming back for the period of latency?
It would be responsible, and maybe they'll do that. But
okay.
It just worries me sending our guys over there to do that. I mean, why is it left up to us to do it? Are the Russians doing it? Is Europe doing it? Why is it up to us to do that?
That's a very good question.
We're talking about billions of dollars to try to contain it, and I emphasize try to contain it so it doesn't wipe out most of Africa, or at least Northwest Africa there.
Stan, what's the real history on Ebola? We're talking, it first appeared, I guess, in the mid-'70s, 1975, 76 or something. Is this some type of combination of natural virus, if that's the right word, and man-made, or what is? How did it? Where did it come from?
I don't know. That's a research project I haven't had time to dig into. Maybe if some of your listeners do find out, it'd be nice to know.
Okay.
The Spanish flu that hit World War I over in Europe, our soldiers brought it back too to the United States. But fortunately, I guess we were cleaner or something. We were able to mitigate the damage. But people passing through Liberia or Sierra Leone may get through screening in various other countries, and it only takes one carrier getting loose on a plane, landing, say, in the States or in Europe somewhere, and he's early stages and not presenting with the symptoms yet. He then infects other people that get onto other flights and disappear. Trying to contain something like that on an international basis is going to be a nightmare. No matter where Ebola came from, we know what it does,
yeah.
and it's bizarre. I mean, it's like the pestilence that's spoken of in the judgment in the Book of Revelation, isn't it?
Indeed it is. And the way, I'm looking at this, none of this really makes sense to me anyway, when we're looking at Ebola and our handling of, as you said, sending the troops over, bringing them back, and of course, what is it with us bringing the Ebola victims or those with Ebola here for treatment to the United States? How does that make sense?
Well, I guess they had great confidence in being able to control the environment, transporting them and then treating them here. It seems to have worked. But bringing back 3,000 troops,
that's
equipment.
That's a whole different aspect. You're right. Yes, and the equipment, because it's my understanding, of course, this virus can live on a inanimate object or surface for quite some time and be spread that way as well. So.
Oh, well, I'm reassured by the White House because they've said that the chances of an Ebola breakout here in the United States are extremely low. So, hey.
Yeah. Well,
do you feel lucky?
The president, gave a statement on Ebola today, and he said just that. the chances of Ebola coming here and causing any kind of problems there are minimal to none, is what he said.
Oh, well, with his record, of truth-telling, I mean, how can you doubt his word?
Exactly. And I asked I asked a physician who appeared on our program this question, and I'll ask you this, Dan, because if you woke up tomorrow morning to the news and you were watching the news and the newscaster said something about Ebola in the United States, I mean, what would cause you alarm to see on the morning or evening newscast to say, oh my goodness, it's here, it's, we are in deep trouble? What would that one news report say? Would it be first case of Ebola at in Colorado Springs, or would it be something to that effect, or something totally different?
Well, I don't look at just for us here in Colorado where we live. I look at the country as a whole and fellow American citizens. What would concern me is if it got loose into airports, or if it got loose into major food chains to the public. They would discover it after it's already gone, and whether they could recall it in time, whatever the food source was, to eliminate the threat would be a concern. The fact that there is an airborne strain of it now available somewhere, I forget where they said it was, it does present another threat. Strong winds, airborne, will it survive from one town to another?
Yeah.
When I was in Vegas, Holly and I were there. The hotel, we were in the Palms, down on the ground floor. Of course, they have a zillion types of slot machines. Everybody's sitting around doing it. And one thing that struck me as interesting was the Asians who were there gambling in considerable numbers. Many of them were wearing white face masks.
Really?
Yeah. Was it for the smoke, or was it for bugs, disease?
Interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know. The announcements, I mean, they may surprise us all with some kind of another announcement, but my concern over the airports and airlines was that we have so many thousand flights a day across the country that by the time they discover it in one airport or one aircraft or whatever, trying to catch all of the potential carriers of that disease and the vectors that they may have touched, it's just almost impossible. And with our government's track record at the moment of doing anything responsibly and correctly, I would worry greatly about that, because it had spread it all over the country and to the world, for that matter, within a matter of days with all the flights.
And, I don't know if you saw this, Stan, but the State Department, I think, ordered 160,000 suits that are Ebola protectant suits. And I don't know if that's any kind of activity that's usually something that they would usually engage in, if it's something for another country, or if it is something that they see as a need that they'll have to use for here, a situation here.
I don't know whether it be for here or for our troops that are going to get sent over there, or for bringing people back and treating them here in various treatment centers, isolation centers, quarantine centers. It's a worry. They obviously don't tell us an awful lot. So when you see these things, it's easy to jump to conclusions, perhaps the wrong ones occasionally. I've certainly been known to do that, But
what would they do? For example, if somebody in Iowa comes down with Ebola and passes away from it, I mean, even handling the body would be a risk. Go ahead.
They'd have to quarantine everybody that touched it or was potentially infected by it, which would require the handlers to have the biohazard suits.
And what do you do about the house? Or let's just say that the person got sick and was in the house. I mean, how do you even clean? And this might sound like a really trite question, but how do you even handle the cleaning of a house?
Well, they have various chemicals that they can spray on everything, surface contacted areas, toilets, sinks, clothing, towels, things where the virus might survive had the person that was infected touched it or sneezed on it or whatever, or dropped blood on it. You can use, as a civilian, you can use concentrations of Clorox and water, and you can kill a lot of these things that are on surfaces that way, with just making little spray guns out of like Windex bottles that you empty and put the stuff in that you want to spray on from the having chlorine in it to kill the viruses.
All right, and in speaking of this too, and this was another concern of mine, I was looking at different reports, government reports, and much like the red cell reports of years ago, a few years ago. Do you see any possibility? Well, there's always a possibility, but do you see any likelihood of a deliberate attack, a bio attack, like ISIS, for example? Yeah, okay, I'm contaminated with Ebola. I'm going into the United States. I'm going to wreak as much havoc as possible. Is that possible, or is that not likely?
Well, gee, Doug, if they hadn't thought of it, they're going to now, aren't they?
Well,
I'm sure that they have addressed this, and they would take sputum or some bodily fluids of an infected person, preserve it, walk across our southern or northern borders, and infect people, at odd places with it here as a method of attacking the United States and bringing it down. I mean, their stated objective, of course, is for us to die as well as Israel. I mean, just wipe us out. So it has often been stated that bio agents, not chemicals so much as living organisms like viral things or bacteria, are the poor country's atom bomb, and all they have to do is loose that amongst the population of the United States. And, of course, as a major power, the United States will pull in its horns and try to take care of itself at home, and will no longer be a military threat to, say, like Russia or some of the Arab countries that will be acting on Israel to try to get rid of it. So, yeah, I think it's possible, and I'm sure they've thought of it. And, I think we may see some problems here in the States, whether it comes from our troops or from somebody else snaking it in. It's just so easy to get across our borders now that, like Texas and Arizona and New Mexico and California, all those areas could easily have the Ebola or some worse engineered virus, weaponized virus in them now, ready to be distributed or being distributed as we speak. We don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Very good. Wow.
Hey, you want to hear a light note of something?
Oh, please.
There was a study done by the American Journal of Political Science, which indicates that your political affiliation may actually correspond with different body odors of the people that are in your group. Now, they found correlations with eating preferences, for instance. Like the left, the socialist, likes strawberry jelly, while the right, conservatives, like grape jelly. The alcohol choices, Republicans like the brown liquors, like bourbon and whiskey and that kind of stuff, whereas the Democrats drink the clear liquids, the really hard gin and vodka and that stuff. And it in psychological differences, the conservatives, it says, will look at an unpleasant image 15% longer than liberals who just can't stand it and look away. And conservatives are more likely to keep an organized room. In fact, one study showed that conservatives are more generally conscientious and liberals are more open to new experience. Anyway, a bit of ha-ha.
Wow.
I'm sure we paid for that research somewhere.
Very interesting. Wow. But the body odor aspect of things, okay, I'm not sure you covered that. What do progressives, liberals smell like?
Well, I don't know. Well, you know how they've done studies that romantically involved people, the ones that really are just wildly attract each other, is due to pheromone release. Like in the insect world, pheromones is how the sexual attraction occurs. So there is something to be said for that, where someone who you get next to and their smell is offensive to you, whether just normal, BO, that would probably be someone who's not on your wavelength of how you think, how you eat, and that kind of stuff. It may be a function of what your diet is and things like that anyway.
I get it. Yeah.
But, anyway,
Wow. Yeah, and you're right. I'm sure we did pay for that study, and I'm sure that there's some people laughing all the way to the bank. But interesting nonetheless. My goodness. What a great way to close out a fantastic information-filled hour. Stan, God bless you, my friend. Man, that's, folks, go back and listen to what Stan had to say again for that hour. A lot of good information there. Wow.
Well, as usual, it's been a pleasure, guys. And the next week may be holding really surprising stuff for us. Who knows?
It's amazing. You wake up every day, you just don't know what the news is going to be. You might have an idea, but there are a lot of surprises in there. But God bless you.
God bless you guys.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night. Folks, that was Stan Deyo from standeyo.com, and of course Holly Deyo. If you haven't gotten his book, what a
Absolutely, and you can go to Hagmann.com, and on our page there on the left-hand side there is a link to you can see the cover of the Cosmic Conspiracy. Click on that, or go to Stan's website at standeyo.com, and you can order the Cosmic Conspiracy there. And we were talking about this book before the show and how it's really a must-have. It's so important. There's great information in there, and anybody who has the ability to get it should get it. It's definitely worth it. I read it a few times, and I know I could still read it a few more with the amount of information that's in there.
Can you tell we love books, Joe? Seriously, we recommend books all the time. But
I was looking around my house today, and I saw all the books that were sitting in different places, and I'm like, man, I got to get these organized. But yeah, you got to keep reading. You got to keep your mind working, and it's important. So many people aren't reading today, and it's a mistake.
I was talking to a few people, and I got to tell you, books right now, to me, contain vastly amount greater information than the web articles do, and it seems like the internet. And folks, I don't know how you feel about this. We can certainly talk about this after the break at 661-244-9839. But it seems to me that a lot of internet-based articles, reports, columns, whether it be from the New York Times to the Wall Street Journal to Bob's blog, they seem to be hit and run news pieces, and they lack the specifics. And I'm not asking for a book to be written about a news story, but I would expect a little bit more journalistic prowess, journalistic acumen, I don't know what you'd call it, to be exercised in the writings on the internet, much like we see in newspapers or in magazines and books, of course. And books are our favorite. So many great books out there, and we had mentioned a lot of them. Just so many great authors, and that's why we have them on. And last night too, Mark Flynn, a fantastic author. That the book itself, The Labyrinth. If you don't have that, what a fantastic book! And by the way, that package at Raiders News Update, which is still linked on the main page of our website. What a great buy! I would urge everyone to take advantage of that because you get so much for your money. And if you want to study the ancient artifacts, architecture, and aspects, kind of the foundation, the architecture of what we're talking about today, it's all right there, folks. With that, we are going to...
We'll get that in the mail to you.
The ink will be smudged by your sweat, I'm sure, but okay.
Well, it's a personal touch. I have a specific point that I wanted to run by you guys tonight, but before I do, I just wanted to extend gratitude to Stan Deyo for his insight into the odious qualities of particular political persuasions. As someone who spends an inordinate amount of time around cadres of Hollywood libs, I would like to suggest what I've noticed they at times smell like, but I can't say it.
I was going to say, now wait a minute. You mean to tell me some of these most glamorous red carpet stars have this? Never mind. Yeah, you're right. You can't
well, the jibber jabber starts and the crowing begins, and sometimes the atmosphere takes a turn, you might say. So,
yes.
But gentlemen, all silliness aside, I did come across something yesterday that I wanted to share with all the listeners, and I was hoping to sort of bounce it off really either one of you, because this one, I got to kind of tip my hat to Sheila for the phraseology, but this is Crazy Town, gentlemen. We just got off at Crazy Town, USA. Yesterday, the front page of the Pasadena Star News, above the fold, headline banner, was a huge story, and I'm going to say what it was in here in a second, and it was picked up today by our local CBS affiliate, KTLA, and that landed it on Drudge. And this is what it is. After 9/11, 2001, the Los Angeles Unified School District received from the central government, the former federal government, some interesting implements for cops that basically keep our school system safe. They're around the high schools and some of the junior highs here in town. But gentlemen, they received a $733,000 up-armored MRAP that had been used to ferry Marines around in Iraq, as well as an undisclosed number of grenade launchers. Los Angeles Unified School District?
Yes.
Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did. Yes. And I was thinking, beanbag, remember, well, at least when I was a kid, we used to have a big thing when I was a kid, beanbags. Does that even ring up? Do people, Joe, do you even know what one of those are, beanbags? I mean,
like
to play with.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was thinking maybe they could use the grenade launchers as beanbag tossers, but it's crazy what we're seeing here with the militarization of the police force. And John, you can't tell me that we have to meet force with force, that school districts have to have this kind of these kind of armaments. This is all about federal funding and control over the force. This is not about anything else.
Well, Doug, I don't want to take up...
Case of allegiance. Yeah, I'm sorry, John. It's a case of allegiance.
No, please, it's just the delay. But what I wanted to run by you, and I think that I would hope that many of the Hagmann and Hagmann family members all over the world are sort of enjoying the similar thing in their lives. But I've noticed over the years since I've been listening to the show and to True News as well, that you really begin to sort of see the news and through that third lens that you often talk about, that third lens of scripture and prophecy. And I think the Holy Spirit will bless you with discernment as well. And this is what I wanted to run by you, Doug. I think I may have picked up a whiff of a possible situation here. Now, yesterday on True News, Rick Wiles did a little 2-minute report reminding his audience that on the 9/11 anniversary that we had here last week, that the Obamas, Barack and Michelle, had a really bizarre choice of photo ops to put out in the global media. And what it was them packing these backpacks for, I guess it was for underprivileged school children or something, and they're there at the table and they're packing these little backpacks, sort of like a swag bag care package. But that on these bags, it said in big letters, kaboom. Now, this is on 9/11, 2014. So, Doug, what I'm wondering is this, and this will be kind of my question to you here tonight. Is it possible, we know that the elitists and the bad guys take a weird pleasure almost in tilting their hand to all of us ignorant sheeple before they do something sinister. So I'm wondering, is it coincidence that the first family, quote unquote, choose this really strange photo op on the 13th anniversary of such a terrible day in our nation's history, and then one day later, major media outlets here in Los Angeles, the number 2 media market in the country, start talking about this militarization of really, I mean, no disrespect intended to LA Unified Police, but they're school cops with grenade launchers. So I'm wondering, does 2 and 2 here equal 5, or does 2 and 2 equal 22? What do you see with this, Doug?
Great question.
Are we seeing so I'll just, in fact, I'll take my answer off air. How's that sound? But I'd love to hear what you think.
All right, buddy. Yeah, I've got my own thoughts on this. Thanks for your call, by the way.
You bet. God bless you, man.
God bless. And here's my thought on this. You raised a very interesting point, and I can say this. Any photo op of the in this case, the renegade in chief and Ms. Renaissance, again, reference to their Secret Service code names, but any photo op, there is nothing in the photograph or nothing in around the renegade, his wife, or anyone else in that image that is not there deliberately or not there deliberately or absent deliberately. It is all staged for a reason. In fact, I was talking with somebody, excuse me, who was on a former, was part of a presidential detail. And of course, you've got your uniformed Secret Service agents, and then you've got your Secret Service agents, and then you've got investigators, and then you've got different varying kinds. And then you've got Secret Service agents who are assigned to the Presidential Protection Detail. In this case, I use the word presidential very lightly and improperly, perhaps. But in back then, during this individual's tenure, and we're talking, I'm just not going to give it up, but even back then, it was extremely highly choreographed. So to the day, to the hour, to the items, to the color of the suit, to the tie, to the cufflinks, to the lapel pins, to the hairstyles, to the glasses, or lack thereof. Any number of things. So what you witnessed, folks, is, and this, by the way, is an Illuminati-controlled environment. Is there a message behind this? You better believe there's a message behind it. Yes. So what is the message, or what is the purpose? Why this photo op as opposed to something totally different? There's two components to this. There's the actual photo op, as described, and then there is the press, the media, that is publicizing it. There's two sides of really the same illuminous coin. Folks, again, they are trying to tell us something. Things. Not something, but things. There are messages being conveyed. Look at the hands. Look at the gestures. Look at the phrases used, if there are any that are accompanying the photographs. And people might think that this is totally ridiculous. Joe, I think you sent me, if not, I've had many people send me the image of the renegade in chief standing, and it would appear the horns of Baphomet appeared out of his head.
Well, yeah, the way they set up the press conference, they had horns in the background that were hanging on a flag, and it looked like he had horns sticking out of his head. And that's not, I said this on Saturday, but I'll say it again, that's not by accident that happens. The way that they plan the speeches and what's going to be seen in the camera view is very meticulous, and they are not going to just let that happen without their knowing.
And that's exactly correct. And I think you made the comment, or somebody made the comment, or it was written. Perhaps the photographer or the videographer or the camera itself moved 1 foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 foot away, or to one side or the other, would completely change the backdrop and, of course, the image. But the image that we saw, and this was not Photoshop, it just happened to be the way it was done, certainly made it appear that Obama had the horns of Baphomet on. Was wearing them, or at least that's how it appeared. Now, what does that mean? Well, in this case, and this could, again, people, if I would be listening to myself a couple of years ago, I'd be calling myself crazy. But you've got to look at this, because we're living in a universe, in a time, in a state where there are messages being sent. In this case, it could very well be, and anything is possible, but I'm also looking at the possibility that Obama has reached his natural, he's expendable. I mean, this is not what I'm saying. This is, I believe that others could be implying this through visuals, or perhaps they're trying to tell you what's really going on. Because why? Because, and this is in Mark Flynn's book, by the way, there is this sick little game, and it's not really a game, but it's a requirement that the Illuminati, the demon worshippers, the Baal worshippers, must convey their intent before they actually go off and do something. And that does include, but is not limited to, identifying certain players of this agenda. So take that for what it's worth. Good question, John, and nothing is by accident.
All right, let's go to another call. We're going to go to area code 727. 727, you're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, Joe and Doug. It's Marie here again. It's so good to hear y'all. And I know you're familiar with Mark Blitz.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've had him on our show.
Oh, have you? Well, see, I hadn't found you that early. Well, he was on TV today, and he did all the timeline on the Shemitah. And he said he came up with tribulation will start next fall.
Well, it's indeed possible. I've talked to Mark, and I'm sure he probably prefaced that by saying, based on his research,
right?
Yeah. And I got to tell you, I'm not sure when it will start, but I'll say this: I don't think that we've ever been in a time in modern history where so many things have fallen into place the way they have with respect to, well, the Shemitah, the blood, or the Shemitah, the blood moons, I'm trying to think what else, Joe. I mean, we got a laundry list of things where there's a confluence of events taking place.
Right.
Mark's a great guy. We're going to have him back on, by the way.
Yeah, and also Jonathan Kahn has been in the hospital with a severe case of pneumonia, so I asked for prayer for him and his family, for his wife who's been diagnosed with Lyme's disease. And so I don't know how Rabbi's doing now, but he's been very, very sick.
Well, certainly our prayers will, and the prayers of our listening audience, will be lifted up. We'll lift him up in prayer, as well as his wife. Did you say Lyme disease, his wife? diagnosed with?
Lyme disease. Yeah, that's what he said on the show, too. I caught him last week, I think it was, on the show. When he introduced his book, the new book, The Mystery of the Shemitah.
Right.
And he was on with the book, and he said then just as he introduced that book, and the day it came out, he was struck with this high fever and pneumonia. But a rare type of pneumonia, he said, where he couldn't even hardly pick up anything. So it's serious.
Well, thank you for letting us know. But I don't believe in coincidences like that. I do believe that there's a level of spiritual warfare.
That's what he said on the show with Mark Blitz today when he was on, too. Yeah, he says it's definite. Isn't that funny, the day the book was released that he went into the hospital?
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you for letting us know about that.
Yeah.
I did hear that Rabbi Khan was stricken with pneumonia. I didn't realize it was a rare form, and I had no clue about his wife. So, again, we'll lift them both up in prayer. And so thank you so much for letting us know that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you both for being there. I appreciate it. And God bless you both. Keep doing the good work.
As well. Thanks.
God bless you too. Thanks. All right. Yeah, keep Jonathan Kahn in your prayers. That's terrible to hear that is going on, but we'll keep praying for him, and he'll get better.
Yeah, indeed. And I just want to acknowledge Summer. Thank you very much for your email where she's saying that Ebola and why the biosuits were ordered, perhaps the suits. Let's see here. The renegade in chief sent American military troops in progress, of course, to aid the control of the Ebola in Africa.
3,000.
Most likely, right, and it's very possible that these suits are for the soldiers. She closes by saying, mind you, it's only a theory, but I've been dead on lately. So, okay.
Well, thank you.
There it is.
No, that does make sense. The number that they ordered wasn't a huge amount, and the amount that they're helping other countries, that does make sense. But you just never know with what we see going on today. And as Stan said, the president earlier today said that Ebola doesn't pose a threat to the United States, but his track record is not too good. We're going to go back to the phones. We're going to go to area code 253. I believe this is Jack in Washington. No, that doesn't make sense. Jack. The number that they ordered wasn't a huge amount, and the amount that they're helping other countries, that doesn't make sense. Right. But you just never know what we see going on today.
Us.
And as Stan said, the president earlier today said that Ebola doesn't pose a threat to the United States. That's a big delay. We're going to go back to the phones. We're going to go to area code 253. I believe this is Jack in Washington. 30-second delay. No, that doesn't make sense. Jack. The number that they all right, we're going to put
we can't. My head's going to explode if we keep doing this. We're going to have to come back to him and have things reset. All right, we're going to go to area. That was a long delay. Usually it's only a few seconds. That seemed like at least 30 seconds. We're going to go to area code 805. 805. Welcome on the Hagmann and Hagmann report. 805. All right. We're going to 413. 413. Thanks for calling. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann report. Go ahead.
Hi, Joe and Doug. I'm up here in the Northeast, and Doug, when you were talking in the first hour tonight about the areas like Lackawanna, Albany, up in that area, this is where I'm from. I don't live in the Catskills. I live in the Berkshires in Massachusetts. Okay. And you connect the dots for me, because the day after you had your super soldier program last week,
with Timothy Alvarino.
Yeah,
yes.
I listened to that 3 times the next day. And I mean, I was just taking in the information and trying to put the pieces together in my head. I'm up here in the Northeast. It's very liberal. You know the area. You know what people are like up here. And there is a lot of strange activity that goes on up here all the time. I wouldn't be a bit surprised. I'm only 60 miles from Albany. But I'm going to keep this short. On the day after the Super Soldier program last week, the local NPR radio station here, WAMC, with Dr. Alan Chartok, had a roundtable interview with, he was an operative who had just come back from the Mideast, was here and was in a think tank session in Hudson, New York on biogenetics. And I just thought that was really important to tell you.
Interesting. And I'm familiar with Hudson, and both Joe and I are familiar with Hudson. And in fact, we stayed in the Hudson, Joe, you and I, and I remember
lost your vehicle
institute.
Oh my goodness, lost your vehicle. But I just keep it in your mind. There are things, and also, Hillary and Bill have a house up here somewhere, right?
Yeah,
Is it in the
Westchester. It's in Westchester County.
Westchester County, that's right.
Right.
So
it
I mean,
would be north, east of it. Yeah.
I'm just saying. That's all. I guess I have and I couldn't believe that they were actually interviewing this man, and this man was being as, coming forward with this kind of information. They even asked him why he was back here, and they were doing, they were doing a think tank on ISIS. And I thought to myself, oh no, is this, okay, you can figure out the rest of what I might have been thinking.
And very well received. Genetics, roundtable.
Up here in Hudson, ISIS, next project, back from the Mideast, blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely. And folks, caller, you're right on the money with that. And I certainly, and I've talked to Steve Quayle enough to know that the stuff does go on here in the United States, and Joe too, and in terms of the planning and even the underground military bases that play a role in all of this alteration.
Yep, and then you've got Black Mountain or Iron Mountain and blah, the whole thing, the whole Northeast thing. Yeah. So I'm going to get off the phone, but and I'm not just caller, I'm Doreen.
Doreen. Well, it's okay. Thank you, Doreen.
You guys have a great night.
All right, you too.
All right, bye.
Joe, sometimes I'm so afraid of getting a caller's name wrong that, I don't know. Of course, that wouldn't be the first time. So.
No, it wouldn't. Let's go to area code 304. 304, you're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Oh.
304. Hi.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're on speaker. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us? All right.
All righty then.
304, if you call back, we will try to get you back on. We're going to go to area code 562. 562, thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 562? All right.
All right, we'll
Third
come
time's
back.
the charm here. Let's go to 602. 602, you're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Yeah, Doug and Joe. This is Jim. I'm calling from the Philippines via Skype. Does it work?
Yeah.
It works beautiful.
Good. You can hear me now.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Well, oh, great. I just logged on about a half hour ago, and I know you only got a couple minutes left. But you did mention about the MRAP, and I do know something intimately about those. I was a contractor in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we got a bunch of them. I think we got more MRAPs than there were soldiers over there back in 2010. And so I was walking by one of them. I pulled the packing list to see where it came in from. You know, it gets routed through Dubai and through Pakistan and different places like that. Well, anyway, I guess I wasn't supposed to be privy to it, but it costs $500,000 for one to be transported there, and another $500,000 if they were to take it out of the country, probably to go back to the United States. So that's an investment above what the paid for this. Now, as far as it being at a school, all I can tell you is I think they're being put in strategic locations at certain high schools where they don't have a big population center. That way, when it's needed, somebody can call, punch in the code, and start it up, and it's loaded with maybe a secret army. Who knows? But it's basically being stationed to desensitize the neighborhood of having an MRAP in their community. And I think that's what it's going to be there for. And as far as the grenade launcher, maybe they have to account for those, and they're just going to have those pre-positioned at high school, so for resupply for, the secret to use, because those are door openers. You fire a grenade at a door, it's going to open up. It was really interesting. You know how Hollywood, how art imitates and that kind of thing. I was watching an NCIS episode where our main characters were trapped on the streets of L.A. and they can't communicate with it. But they knew on certain strategic location at these electrical, container boxes that you see in neighborhoods, like on somebody's street corner. Oh, yeah. It looks like a service box for telephone or electric. And they had the code to get in it. And when they opened it up, it had weapons in there. It had bullets. It had water. A little resupply for a particular neighborhood where they're far away from being supported by police or whatever. So I just thought it out there because I've said, boy, that's unusual. So, Hollywood.
Perfect. And I want to. It makes sense. And in fact, I just while you're on the line here, I just want to get your take on this. We were close. Well, we were at a mall, a very small mall. In fact, in most cities, it would probably be smaller than a what would you call it? Like a shopping plaza, we'll say. But this is an enclosed mall that maybe has at most 2 anchor stores that would be about the size of a small Kmart on both ends, and then a couple of probably in total maybe 12 stores. This mall was closed, and what I found very interesting was, and I found this out by accident, that the local police department was actually leasing space for military-style equipment gear in that mall. Now, this is a place that people drive by all the time. They've got no idea what's in there. And if you look at it, it's just a closed mall with nothing there. However, inside, literally millions of dollars of paramilitary equipment that actually was not only alarmed but guarded by human beings on the inside. But by looking at it from the outside, you wouldn't be able to tell what it was. So just something, right. And almost dead center in the center of town. So
right, it's hide in plain sight, and that's all logistics for them to prepare now and take over the malls. This is just my take on it from what you said. Take over the malls and the closed schools, the closed real small bases throughout the United States. because, you know, all the bases are trying to close up along the shorelines and move inland. I've seen a few of my bases close, like at El Toro in California, that closed. And then they went to Miramar, and now they're getting out of there, and then they're moving into 29 Palms. They're trying to get into the desert because they don't trust the shoreline for whatever activity is going to happen there. But yeah, something's happening, guys. I appreciate your show. It's really, you kept me entertained for the last 7 months while I'm trying to recuperate from all the chemicals that they were spraying in Afghanistan in the air. So, my lungs are
my goodness. And you've chosen the Philippines, I take it, as your safe haven. Is that?
I live in a little farming village, and I'm surrounded by half farmland and half jungle. And you would not believe the great oxygen content. The only problem is I'm about a mile from the beach and about 20 miles from a volcano, so it's a little scary.
Yeah, it would be, but well, we'll keep you in our prayers. But nonetheless, the hand of God can certainly protect you, and then will protect you, I'm sure. But enjoy the Philippines and enjoy life, and be just recuperate, recover from. Well, by the way, what were they using in Afghanistan? Do you know precisely?
It's exactly the same thing that's happening in America right now with the high-flying 135, KC-135 tanker type, 4 jets and 3 jets type airplanes. And they're spraying chemicals crisscrossing. And we could start off with blue sky during the day. And then, we're on a small fob and, maybe 600, troops. And I'd ask, maybe a colonel, I go, what is that? And they go, they told us it was, to keep the area flooded. We get rains and snows and stuff like that here. That way, it makes it impossible for the enemy to, to play the game. And I go, yeah, right. Well, I couldn't breathe. Wow. I was at 10,000 feet in a place called Gosling. Yeah.
10,000 feet, it would be difficult to acclimate yourself anyway, wouldn't it? I mean, at 10,000 feet.
It takes about 3 months, but you can get used to it. But then, just recently is when they started doing it, though.
Gotcha.
I say within the last year, and it's just too much. I just couldn't take it no more. So I entered my contract, and I said, I'm going to go recuperate.
Well, thank you, buddy, for your call. God bless you. Stay safe out there. And thanks for talking to us from all the way on the other side of the world. It's great. It's great. I'm glad we kept them entertained and hopefully informed. Thank you, sir. God bless, man.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, buddy.
All right, let's go to area code 256. 256, we're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi. My name's Ann. I'm in Alabama.
Ann from Alabama. Great to hear from you.
Yes. Yeah, I've never heard anybody from Alabama call you before.
No, we've had a couple.
Well, good. It's good I'm not the only one here then. I had a friend of mine, her granddaughter, a 7-year-old granddaughter, it was suspected that she was being sexually abused, and they've been 1.5 years in the system trying to get this man that they thought had abused this child, and nothing was happening. Well, a couple of days ago, she was called to the school to pick up her daughter, and when she got there, she was met by 2 people who took her into the school and identified themselves as Homeland Security. They told her that the gentleman that was suspected of abusing her daughter, what happened was they found a picture on a child porn site online and tracked it back to her daughter and this man. But it was all Homeland Security, and you guys are the only ones I can think to ask, why would it be Homeland Security on a case like that?
Well, first of all, I got to say this: that certainly is not something you want to hear. when you arrive at your child's school. But, second of all, with respect to Homeland Security, in some jurisdictions, this is the official story, in some jurisdictions it is my understanding that their duties have actually been increased to how can I put this, to involve themselves in conspiracies that include but are not limited to large sexual type of sexual rings. Now that's not their charter. So under Homeland Security, they have ICE and DHS. They work on these child exploitation operations. Looking at their website here, yeah. They have a global virtual task force, a operational smartphone app, and a number of different things here. That wasn't their initial charter to do so. This goes on to say Homeland Security participates in all 61 internet crimes against children on task forces across the United States, led by local and state law enforcement agencies. They work in partnership with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and other federal agencies to help solve and resolve sexually exploited children. Like I said, the virtual global task force, non-governmental organizations, and private sector partnerships to fight child exploitation, information, and images that travel over the internet. So maybe it's the internet.
Okay, so that's a newer thing that they're doing.
Well, shortly after the implementation of, there was the creation of DHS based on law. Okay, the law created DHS, the actual DHS itself. Then there was the merging of DHS under the umbrella of the different agencies, and DHS itself is an umbrella organization. Yeah, and then additional TSA, duties. I saw these different agencies. And then the additional duties were taken from different agencies and put underneath the umbrella of DHS. So it's been and still is an evolving practice. So in other words, there's an ever-expanding power base of DHS.
Right, that's what I was going to ask you. It's almost as though they're trying to get us used to the fact that they're involved with everything.
Well, they are, yes, and that is exactly, at least in my view, looking back in history. If you go back and study some of the comments, some of the words by George Herbert Walker Bush, the father, of course, and if you look at what his plans were with respect to the war on drugs specifically, okay, and even when he was vice president under Ronald Reagan, you'll see this little, at least again, this is based on my research only. This is not fact. This is my research. It would appear that 9/11 caused, or at least gave the excuse of the formation of DHS. However, the idea itself was part of the agenda of George Herbert Walker Bush and those around him when he was vice president and then as he became president. So this has been a globalist plan from the beginning. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
It does, and it seems like it's going quickly at this point. I'm in a very small county called Etowah County up in northeast Alabama, and you're talking about the MRAPs and all that. Our tiny little county has, I can't even tell how many military vehicles, helicopters, boats. We've got an ICE unit at the county jail, the whole floor for ICE. Wow. And it's just unreal around here. And then I hear about Homeland Security coming in for that. So needless to say, the hair on the back of my neck was standing up at that point.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you were paying attention to that, and certainly a lot of people don't understand the sweeping powers that DHS has been, well, under the umbrella of DHS have been granted, in this being part of it. So it's the new normal, perhaps, shall I state, but it's very disconcerting, especially when you look back just 50 years ago, or even 20 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, I'm 54, so I actually remember freedom.
Yeah, me too. Hey, remember Andy Griffith when Barney had one bullet in his gun? You know, I mean, and the gun rack was never opened, and you know, the sheriff walked around without a gun. But even more importantly, remember when you could pass by or see a police officer coming down the road and feel reassurance instead of fear. Remember that.
Well, I know most of them, you know, well enough to know which ones to avoid and which ones to interact with. So, like I said, it's a small county. You learn that quickly. But I thank you so much for answering that question. That's really had me concerned, and I love your show. I've been listening for almost a year now, and it's just been great for me, and I thank you so much.
Well, thanks for listening, and we certainly appreciate it. God bless you. Thanks for the call from Alabama. All right.
Have a great night. Bye-bye.
I just love hearing where the different listeners are, and you know, hey folks, if you do see somebody driving around with one of our bumper stickers, make sure you stop and introduce yourself. I've been sending them out, and if you haven't got yours yet, just hang loose. It's coming.
And if I'm not mistaken, are those new ones over here?
Yes. In fact, if you go to HagmanandHagmann.com, you can see you can see the assortment of bumper stickers from the very 3-inch circular ones to the larger normal ones. But I'll tell you what, it's we had our first actual verified encounter between two listeners where a bumper sticker was responsible for their introduction to one another. So
I didn't get that memo. You're gonna have to forward that to me.
You were here. No, you were here.
Okay.
And we talked about it. It was last week, I believe.
See how well I listen?
Yeah. But folks, if you've raised kids, you understand, right? Just kidding. But no, it's so they do serve a purpose, and it's not. A lot of people say, well, my goodness, you're promoting your show. Well, no, you know what we're doing? We're promoting the ability of listeners to interact with one another, identify each other, and again, you might think, well, that's an invitation by, I don't know, some police force to crack down on you. Well, it could very well be, but you know what? It's going to happen anyway.
At this point, yeah.
Exactly. So this is something that we try to do. We're not selling these bumper stickers. We're not doing that. We're passing them out.
And I have them on my car. I have them on my car.
Yeah. Now there might come a time because they are expensive to have made in bulk. I mean, even 1,000. It's a lot of money but again, what we're attempting to do is not just get the word out about the show, but also bring listeners together in the only way, or in one of the only ways we know how, without being overly obtuse about the entire situation. So that's just our way of doing things. I don't know if that makes sense, but hey, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right. We have just a few minutes left, and we only have phone calls left that weren't answered, so we're going to leave those alone as the program clock is winding down under 3 minutes here. And I guess, we covered a lot today, and there's other news we didn't cover today that we cover tomorrow. We have news on Fukushima, and let me just read this headline here from Natural News for anybody who wants to find it. It's up there from yesterday. Over 2 trillion barracles of radioactive waste flowed from Fukushima plant into Pacific in just 10 months from the disaster. And they say that this, from TEMCO, the rate of release was 10 times higher than TEMCO's pre-meltdown threshold for radioactive material. Barraquil is a unit measuring radioactive material that corresponds to 1 unit of radioactive decay per second. Anyway, the story here is that if these numbers are correct, the estimation by TEMCO and other nuclear regulatory agencies were well this was not reported at all, really, or was minimized a huge amount, because, you know, we haven't heard anything from Japan about their citizens. You know, are they sick? Are people suffering from more birth defects, more cancerous sicknesses or illnesses than before pre-disaster? And what are we seeing here, if anything, on the West Coast throughout the country? Is there a rise in, you know, these numbers? This is something we're going to have to do some research on and look into. Also, we can get into the Real ID Act and some other police state news, but we will have time to get into that tomorrow and much more. We want to thank you all for listening tonight. Stan Deo, who those who joined us late, was back on the second hour, and it was a fantastic interview. We're glad to have him back, and I think that's all.
All right, folks, so that'll do it for us tonight. I just want to say God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you. But please do us a favor. Tell others about the program. And if you want, if you do want a bumper sticker, just send a request. Go to hagmanandhagmann.com. And don't forget to include your mailing address as well as a name rather than just initials, because I got a first-class letter back. Actually, the name didn't match a mailing address, so they're getting picky with first-class mail, apparently. But just go to hagmanandhagmann.com, click on the contact form, and fill it out, and we'll get one out to you. With that, Joe, thanks for a great program.